For Chapter 4's assignment, you're basically going to create the exact same assignment. The only difference is that you should have changes in your design, whether that means a change in font, the change in the message, changes in the colors, in the way the flower looks, in the way the pot looks, whatever it may be. You can even get more complex and choose to do something more creative, like let's say you did a happy birthday greeting, and instead of designing a pot and doing kind of the curved edges the way we did for the chapter assignment, maybe in addition, where we would have used the armature layer for the stem to make it look like it's growing and moving out of the pot, you instead add birthday balloons, and the little strings that come off the balloon are waving in the wind using the armature features. So you can get as creative with this as you'd like, but as long as you do the requirements for the assignment, so I can see everything I need to see, such as you designing a graphic and curving the edges and creating a graphic symbol and using armature layers and all that good stuff, then you can get as creative as you'd like with this assignment. So as you can see with this one, I did change the message, I changed the colors, I did my own brush style, etc. So one of the things I did want to talk to you about is make sure that when you're creating these projects that you're keeping the layers as organized as possible. Not only is this good practice for you, but it's good for other people that have to work with your assignment, whether me grading it or let's say you're working in a professional industry and you were working with a team. You need to make sure to make it as clear and organized as possible for them so it's easier for everyone to work. So I will require that you make everything in your timeline as organized as you can. So seeing things like these empty layers or even unnamed layers is something that you shouldn't have in your project. So I'll go ahead and delete these two layers, and then let's explore what this project looks like. So one of the ways to really explore a project is to lock down your layers and turn the layers visibility off, and then look at them one at a time. So now we have this background layer, and this has a rectangle in the back and then brush strokes on the front to create a unique design. So again, this design should be your own style, whether it's different colors, the way you did the brushes, the brush choice, whatever it may be, you need to create your own style for this. Then on top of that, we have a frame layer. And again, as long as you have a frame, it can be whatever design you want to make it. Then on top of that, we have organized this into a background folder. That way we can turn on and off the entire background altogether. And then we have a flower layer, which has a graphic symbol of a flower, and that has some internal animation that we'll check out in a second. And then last, we have a message layer. And the message layer only appears on frame 65 because it's going to wait for the entire animation to run through before it gets to frame 65, and then we can stop this animation so we can see that text. So looking at this timeline, you can see that we have 65 different frames. All of the frames on the main timeline are just steady frames. There's no animation in here. And yet we can see that the flower has animated. So if we unlock this flower layer and double click inside of it, you can see that now we're inside of a graphic symbol called flower. So you will need to create this flower inside of a graphic symbol, or create it first and then convert it to a graphic symbol. Now you can see that we have 65 internal frames, and now you can see some of the animation. So let's check out what we have going on here. Let's again lock all these layers, turn off all these layers. The first layer is called the pot back, and that's just the very back of the pot. Then we have an armature layer, which you can tell by this little icon of a running man. This armature layer allows us to grow and stretch this stem out. So if I scrub the playhead along, you can see many keyframes along the way, because you will pose your stem at different points in time, and it will create all of the animation or the in-between animation between these keyframes. So as I move my playhead along, you can see that that stem keeps growing and moving until the very end where it's a smooth stem. So what we actually do is you work backwards. You design it first, how it's going to look when it's done animating, and then you go backwards and add the animation after the fact. So let's look at what is happening on the pot layer. That's the very front pot, and that's when you're going to work with some of the tools, the manipulation tools, to create some of the curved edges and then add a gradient. So again, you can design your pot the way you see fit, but I should be able to see some of those curved edges, and I should be able to see a gradient. Then we have the flower layer, and it doesn't appear or start animating until frame 45. Now, with frame 45, you can see it's really, really small, but this motion tween, which we can tell it's a motion tween because it's blue, as we move it up, the flower slowly gets bigger and it starts moving with the stem in the same direction, so that way we could create natural movement. So if we go back out to scene 1, you can see again, if we scrub this, you can see that animation in context. And there comes the flower. And then we hit the Happy Mother's Day text. Now, when you're looking at this, it appears to work fine in the Animate program. But if we were to preview this by doing Command Return or Control Enter, we can open it up into our browser and notice that as we watch it, we see the animation perfectly, but then we only see a flash of the text, so it doesn't really give us time to read it or absorb it. So what we want to have happen is we want to have it stop when we see the text. In order to do this, we need to add script or action script, or actually script for HTML5 Canvas. Now, just so you know, when I did preview that, it gave me a bunch of warnings, and these are things you don't have to be worried about right now, so go ahead and read them just so you can see what was happening with it, but you can ignore those for now. And if we go back to the timeline, in order to add script, we need to follow some very specific guidelines. First, you need to create a new layer and rename it Actions with capital A. Lock that layer down so you don't add any artwork onto that layer. And make sure the Actions layer is always at the top of your timeline. Now, in order to add actions, when you first add actions, it will automatically put it to the very first keyframe to the left of the playhead. So right now, the only keyframe we have is a blank keyframe on frame 1. So because there's no other keyframe available, it's going to automatically put our stop script on frame 1. But what that means is that it's literally going to stop here. It's never going to move. It's never going to animate. We're only going to see this background frame and pot. So this is not what we want. We actually want it to stop on frame 65. In order for that to happen, I need to click on frame 65 and then go to Insert, Timeline, Blank Keyframe. That's going to add a blank keyframe that we can add script to stop it at the 65th frame. With that set, we can go ahead and go to the window menu and open up our Actions panel. So now we can type in our action if we know it. So if you are already familiar with ActionScript, you can type it in here. Or I can go up to the window menu, choose Code Snippets, and this is a way for us to do really basic script that's used frequently throughout your Animate CC projects. So let's take a look at this Actions panel real quick. This is telling us that we're on the current frame on the Actions layer on frame 65. So if this said a different layer like the flower layer, or it said a different frame like frame 2, then you know you're in the wrong place. And you would need to click on the right frame on the right layer that you want to add actions to. So we know we're on the right frame and the right layer. Now we need to either add ActionScript or HTML5 Canvas script. Because we're on a Canvas document, we should use Canvas script. If we were on an ActionScript 3.0 document, we should use ActionScript script. So let's go ahead and open the HTML5 Canvas options. And we want to control how our timeline is moving. We don't want it to automatically loop like it normally does. So we'll go ahead and toggle this down, and then you can see the option to stop at this frame. In order to add this action script to the current frame, you can either click Add to Current Frame, or double click it and it will add it to the current frame. So again, always make sure you're on the correct frame, on the correct layer before you do that. If not, you can delete this, click on the right frame, and then add the actions again. So in order to tell that we actually have actions on that frame, if you move your playhead over, you can see on the 65th frame on the actions layer, you see a tiny little white A at the very top, and that indicates that there is action script on that frame on that layer. If you were to see an A here, an A here, an A here, etc., then that means that you have action script in all those places, and those could potentially cause errors. So let's go ahead and test and see if this works. So again, Command Return or Control Enter. We watch the animation happen, and voila, we see our title. So this is working perfectly. Now we just need to publish it. So we'll go up to File, Publish Settings, and because this is HTML5 Canvas, we don't have the options to do the FLA Swift and all that other good stuff. So in the book, it talks about these other different formats. Right now, we just want to choose JavaScript HTML. We can choose the output name here, but I think it's pretty good and it's probably going to the right folder because I put all of my projects into folders before I even start working on them. And then we can choose any of these if we want to, but right now it's just fine. We don't have to do that. So we can go ahead and click publish. And once we publish it, we can check out our project folder and see what assets it created. So it created the JS file, JavaScript, and an HTML file, and then you have the original FLA. And by the way, this recover FLA is because I haven't saved this project. So if I click File, Save, I can come back over, and all of a sudden you see that recovery file went away. So that's just in case like the power goes out or you haven't saved in a long time and the program quits or your computer freaks out, then that recovery file will be there. So these three files, the Flash, HTML, and JavaScript, are the three files I need for this project. So again, you're going to need to compress this folder, add your last name to it, and turn it into the Dropbox as we do every single week.